How's that for a view? Kind of duck down here out of the way of this wind. I hate background sound. It's funny. Like the next time we talk to David Plata, sometimes I like to tease him about his background sound. He just powers right through it. I can't do it, man. Can't do it. But anyway, what happened a little while back? Right, a little while back, we were talking about somebody mentioned about my language. I think in the comment section below, somebody pointed out to me, a friend of mine said, "Hey man, they're talking about your language. Somebody must have mentioned your language in a video." And my buddy said, he goes, "Why don't you ask the people who are upset with you in any way, shape, or form, or upset with you for your language, you should throw out a question and ask them if they would like to have you on their team or not if the shit flew." I guess that's a good point to be made, right? Because I don't know basically any of you out there. I know a few of you out there watching. I don't know many of you. But regardless of what you think of me or how offended I might be towards you, I will guarantee you that I will fight for you. If the shit flew, this barrel's going to be hot, and it's going to be hot in your favor, helping, all right? So maybe think about that the next time you think you're upset with me in any kind of way. I'm here to fight for the people, okay? I'll tell you what, if somebody's willing to fight for me, I don't give a shit what curse words they use. Let her rip. Shotgun the cursed words. Rapid fire them, I don't care. Let her rip. Whatever you gotta do, as long as you're on the good side of the line, right? Offended culture sucks. There's no room for it here, you guys. Nobody is safe. Nobody who's a member of offended culture is safe here. I know I've said it a handful of times, but it needs to be said again or the odd time. It's not safe here if you get offended easily or about stupid shit that doesn't really matter in the scheme of things. Now what do we got? What's this say? Now it's all starting to make sense. 3 parts. All right, that's good. I love hearing about that. Progress. I know this is way too long to read. Use any portion of it or none at all. But this is the first time I've written it all down, and it feels good to get it out there. Oh, I'm going to read it all. I haven't a clue how long it is, but I'm going to read it all. Part 1. It'll start in 1973 in a semi-rural western Pennsylvania. During the course of that summer, the following happened. My oldest sibling, my sister, who lived in a remote part of the county, came home one night. As she drove down her driveway to the rear of the house, she saw something standing next to her husband's plumbing truck. The kind with large utility body on it that stands at least 8 feet tall. According to her, the thing was taller than the truck. As her headlights hit it, it vanished down the tree line. You have to know my sister to know that she's not the type of person to make stuff up. A dead serious type of personality. She didn't tell anyone about this for several years. That's unfortunate. Around the same time, my oldest brother was rabbit hunting one day in the woods behind her house. He was a super fit athlete and cross-country runner just out of high school. As he made his way through a meadow at the bottom of a steep hill leading down from his sister's property, he heard loud bipedal footsteps to his left in a heavily wooded section of briars and undergrowth. At first he thought it was a bum. That's what we called them back then. So he yelled out that he had a shotgun. Whoever it was better get lost. The footsteps continued. They stopped when he stopped and started when he started. He decided to get out of there and started back up the hill. The footsteps paced him. He said he never heard branches breaking or twigs snapping, even though the brush was super thick where the noise was coming from. The thump of 2 heavy feet. So he decides to move much more rapidly up the hill. The steps continue, and then he breaks into an all-out sprint, figuring there is no hobo going to keep up with cross-country running kid, but it did. As he broke into the clearing of my sister's backyard, he could hear whatever it was pacing back and forth in the brush. He didn't know about what my sister had seen, and he didn't tell anyone about this right away. A few weeks later, and about 20 miles away from my sister lives, we lived in a large apartment complex that was surrounded by wooded tracks, but not remote by any means. Late one summer's evening, my brothers and I and some friends were outside, and all of a sudden from the woods behind the complex came an inexplicable scream, the likes of which none of us had ever heard before. Sort of like someone was torturing a large animal. Very primal and multi-layered in a way I can't accurately describe. It sent chills through you. It was so loud that people started coming out of their apartments. We stood a few hundred yards away from the edge of the woods and wondered what in the heck was making this ungodly sound. None of us dared to enter the woods. It was after hearing this that my brother opened up about what happened to him while hunting. He would share this story with my sister some years later. Then she opened up about what she saw that night in 1973. She didn't want people to think she was crazy. Part 2. Fast forward to 1994. I'd since moved to South California. I'm an avid hiker and backcountry lover. It was an early spring day, and I went hiking alone in the San Jacinto wilderness just outside of Palm Springs. It was a beautiful sunny day. I hiked and cross-country skied this area before. I was on a section of trail that dropped off steeply to my left and rose very steeply to my right. Sort of a shelf trail. Very heavily forested with large pine trees and undergrowth. A couple of miles in, on a sweeping left-hand bend in the trail, I was stuck with sheer terror and stopped in my tracks. It felt as if I was surrounded by absolute darkness and pure evil. I don't know how, but I was 100% sure that I was going to die right there. I've never been more scared in my life. I'm 6'4", 225, and I don't scare easily. I was not a religious man nor a Christian, more of an agnostic. The feeling grew more and more intense until finally I cried out with all the strength I could muster up, "God help me." Instantly the fear and darkness left. The sun was shining again and the birds were singing. I turned around and walked back to the trailhead, and believe it or not, I had perfect peace and no fear. I keep singing that kid's song, "Yes, Jesus loves me because the Bible tells me so," all the way out. Not sure where that even came from. I did become a Christian shortly after the experience. I've always thought that what happened was an attack by the devil or his minions, but after hearing the similarities of the stories you received, I wonder if the hairy men were somehow involved. Or if they're the same. Who knows? Part 3. Fast forward to fall 2019. I had recently purchased a small cabin in the Big Bear area of South California. I was getting into peak hopping, trying to get to the top of a different peak each time I went hiking. On a trip up to Gray's Peak just outside of Green Valley, I left the main trail to relieve myself. As I walked down and around some downed trees, I noticed some interesting tracks that had been left in the pine needle and leaf-covered forest floor. Nothing too deep, but rather large. And as I followed them, the story unfolded. Something large with toes had been chasing a deer. The two of them skidded on the needles as they made sharp turns. The tracks went down over a steep embankment that led off a cliff that dropped down the highway below. I took pictures. I put my iPhone 6 OtterBox carrier next to them for scale. The phone camera doesn't do them justice, but I thought, how odd are these tracks? I asked an 80-year-old friend of mine who was born and raised in Big Bear if he was aware of any reports of Bigfoot in the mountains, and he said no. Okay, weird, but not real proof. Winter 2020. Same mountains. I snowshoe in on a closed fire trail that leads up to Butler Peak Fire Tower. This peak is only a couple of miles from Gary's Peak. The area is heavily used by hikers, bikers, etc., but not so much in the winter. On my first snowshoe of the winter, I heard an unusual sounding cry up on a ridge above me that sounded sort of like a coyote, but trailed off in a very weird way. I didn't think anything about it. This happened again the next weekend when I ventured back in on snowshoes, the same single very weird coyote call. Snow doesn't last long in the San Bernardino Mountains due to our proximity to the ocean. The lower elevations of the trail are clear of snow. I decided to hike the extra 3 miles up to the fire tower. As I got higher in elevation, I ran into knee-high snow. There were no other tracks telling me I was the first one up there in quite a while. There were no other tracks telling me I was the first one up there in quite a while. I didn't have my snowshoes with, dumb on my part, so I post-holed for a mile or so before I couldn't go any further. Ugh, story of my life. I post-hole every fall for frickin' ever. As I paused to rest on a ridge, Off to my right, I heard 4 distinct wood knocks. Bam, 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 bam. Loud. Okay, I thought that was a really large woodpecker. About a minute later, I heard 4 knocks pretty far away, several ridges over. I looked for tracks and watched the ridge lines all the way back to the Jeep, but nothing. A few weeks later, same trail, I was making a loop trip on the side of the trail. As I rounded a corner, I heard a very clear whoop. Just then, 3 mountain bikers came around the bend. Okay, I thought, they were the source. They passed me, then down to my left I heard what sounded like someone talking loudly. I turned down another trail that went in that direction. I ran into light snow on the trail in shady areas. There was no footprints. No one was in the area where I heard the talking. Weird. I know these beings exist. I truly believe they are somehow spiritual beings, perhaps not in a good way, but possibly related to the races of giants as told in the Bible. I just don't know. All right. Thanks for those 3 experiences, and it wasn't too long, right? Wasn't painful at all. And I bet the curiosity just drives you crazy, right? And I'm sure you continually dig for more answers to what you experienced. But you're not alone. No one's alone anymore. Not with this crew of people. Pretty amazing. Thanks for that share. Appreciate your time you took to send that to us. Emailing people isn't it's not the easiest thing to do. For me anyways, that's for sure. What do we got? Sasquatch encounter, game warden explanation. Oh, this ought to be interesting. I was a baby at the time, so I was in the presence, but this was my family that saw it. This was a very small town in Vermont that has a lot of side roads, and before GPS, it was easy to get lost. I've personally gotten lost in that town myself. My mother was driving down the road, and they got lost, so they were on an unfamiliar road, and they kept driving about a mile after the incident. My brother turns to my mother and says, "Did you see that?" And my mother was like, "Oh my God, you saw that too?" Now, this is a small town in Vermont, so trust me, there's plenty of mountains and plenty of woods for these things to live in. That's why when those idiots from Finding Bigfoot went up there and they were shocked at the mountains of Vermont. Come on, we're the Green Mountain State for Christ's sakes. Oops. Well, that's what he wrote. They both described seeing the same exact thing. A 6 to 7 foot tall, lean, probably juvenile, hairy man. It was covered from head to toe and hair, but it had a face that was sunken in. When I asked if you're sure it wasn't a man in a ghillie suit, she said, absolutely, positively not. The face was different. It was hair. Definitely not a ghillie suit. It disappeared in a matter of seconds after them seeing it. So being in the presence of that at the time is definitely cool. I wish I had been big enough to see it. So fast forward to years later, I'm sitting down with my buddy who is a former game warden, and he's a pretty straight shooter. I had mentioned the possible existence of Bigfoot. I told him I knew people that had seen one. He said, yeah, they're definitely out there. So being a game warden, I asked him, why wouldn't the government acknowledge these things? And when he gave me the answer, everything came to light. He said the same reason why when we see wolves or we see cats up in the trees, our bosses tell us, no, you didn't. Or if they find a body of a dead wolf or cat, they bury them. It's so that the land doesn't become protected, because at that point, the government becomes a lot busier if you find a rare species. That made the utmost sense in my eyes. I really do hope to have a sighting someday. I drive a lot of back roads, and I always have my head on a swivel, hoping one day to see one. My mother says if you would ever go out looking for him, you're not going to find them. It's just a chance occurrence because she didn't believe in it before she saw it. Have a great day, and thanks for sharing all the stories. Tony Zeman. Tony, thanks for that share, man, and I really appreciate you passing on what the game warden said. I'm always curious about what they think of this topic. I do know there's game wardens that have seen these things. I know there's 2 game wardens up in the Yukon who rode their quads down the side of the Alaska Highway on this side, and there's one standing there right on the other side of them, on their side of the highway in the ditch looking at them. I know that happened for a fact. So it's always good to hear from the people who are funded from the government. as well our money, right? I want to hear what the government people are told when it comes to this topic. Why are they told to shut up? Why are they told not to share? Military guys, why are they threatened not to share when meanwhile our streets are absolutely full of ex-military people discarded and thrown in the frickin' ditch? Yeah, I won't start going down that route. Obviously, all the injustices piss me off in the world. But thanks again for sending that to me. And if you hear any more from your game warden buddy or any other game wardens or anybody else, make sure you send it in, all right? We're interested. We're curious. We want to know. Hi, my name is Larry Miller, and feel free to use my name if you like. Done. This took place in the Fraser Flats area in California. Gonna get down to it. Back in October 2018, there's 3 of us who always go deer hunting together, but one buddy had a friend this year to join us. Didn't know the guy, but the kid was a character, and that was his first and last trip up hunting with us. Don't worry, he's still alive, but while in his drunken state around the campfire, he said he had an alien encounter just up the mountain where we were. He said it was a gray mom, dad, and child alien beings with 3 long fingers and communicated telepathically. Told him there was nothing to be scared about, and that they just go to that area for vacation. Anyways, we looked at each other and shook our heads and called him a drunk ass and for him to go to bed. Kid was smashed. While being up there, we seen a lot of numerous does and a couple of bucks going along with bear and kitty cat sign. Wildlife everywhere. My buddy got a shot off, but it was unsuccessful. Anywho, 2 weeks later, I wanted to go back up to that same area, but my 2 buddies couldn't go, so I went up with my 8-year-old son to the same area and found a spot and no logging road and set up camp. While in the same area where we seen all the wildlife 2 weeks prior, there was nothing. Not a bird, not a chipmunk, not even a cricket. Basically dead. Absolutely dead. So I'm thinking there's a cat or a bear nearby, and that's why it's so quiet. So we hunted anyway. Just old sign and nothing more, which I kind of already figured with the eerie silence of the forest. So we went to bed that night. We couldn't have a fire because it's California and you're not allowed to do anything. We're in a tent. I'm asleep in my cot, and about 1 a.m. or so, I wake up out of a dead sleep, wide awake and 100% alert. So I'm saying to myself, why the hell did I wake up like that? A noise must have startled me, so I laid there and went into radar mode. My ears were ringing from me trying so hard to pick up a sound and nothing. I had to piss, so I got up, grabbed my sidearm and headlamp and went outside. Dark at first. I looked around, didn't hear any movement. I clicked on the headlamp and scanned for eyes and nothing. Took a leak and jumped back into bed. Right when I was about to sign up, I can see this glow through my closed eyes. I open my eyes and there's this very bright light above our tent, like a helicopter spotlight, but zero sound. I rub my eyes like this can't be real. I jump out of my cot, grab my gun, and as soon as I stepped out of the tent, it was gone. It was so bright I could see the shadows of the pine needles from the branches above. I'm freaking out at this point, and I laid there the rest of the night trying to make sense of it. I've had friends say, well, it was maybe poachers, but the light would have been from the sides of the tent, not directly above, and there was zero sound. The only noise was me breathing and the beat of my heart. And I got to thinking about the kid's story about his alien encounter. Maybe he was telling the truth. I'm a man who needs answers, and the only logical thing I can come up with, if maybe it was a meteor coming into our atmosphere, or a UFO or something paranormal, I don't know. My buddy's joke asked if I was probed, and God, I hope not, but it was weird how I woke up so alert prior to the incident. Anyways, I want to say thanks for doing what you've been doing. Makes me feel better knowing I'm not the only one that has had some strange shit. Keep up the good work. God bless, and stay safe out there. All right, man. Thanks for that experience. Share. Yeah, you know the bright light thing. You've heard it just as many times as I have here. It's so common, it's ridiculous, and I haven't a clue what it is. Haven't a clue. Couple ideas, but I don't have solid enough information to repeat it online as of yet. All right. Titled Mind Speak. Dear Steve, thanks for what you do. I'm the guy from Prince George, BC, who saw the 14-footer with those 2 glowing orbs floating in the air in front of his chest and abdomen. You know what, man? I've never forgot that one. I've thought about that encounter you shared a few times. Probably mainly because it's right in our fucking, or Probably mainly because it's right in our backyard, right? And there's been more than just few emailing encounters from around there. There's a lot of sightings between Prince George and Jasper. A piss load. Well, they're all over the province, right? Since that experience, I've had a half dozen more experiences. It seems that either I've become hyper aware of these things or somehow I am now attuned to their presence. Maybe they're intentionally revealing themselves. I wish I knew the actual mechanism or how to turn it on or off or up or down. I've written to you about my other experiences. I believe that these things have full access to our minds. Our thoughts and memories are an open book to them. I also believe that they view, alter, edit our memories and experiences. I believe they can real-time remove their image from us as it is happening. I've had 2 walk past me in dry leaves crunching, bipedal walking, no tracks, no visual on 2 separate occasions. See, I wouldn't crave that experience myself. I've experienced the mind speak on 2 separate occasions that I can remember. I suspect that this may have occurred many times to more people than we can count. The feeling of dread and impending doom may include memory suppression. I've also experienced a dead silence. More will be revealed. Glad you're feeling better. Bill, Bill, thanks for that, man. There's definitely some weird shit going on. Keep us posted if you got more happen to you up there, all right? We want to hear about it. Or if you know anybody else. British soldier in the Rockies and the Sixth Sense. Hey Steve, great work on what you're doing with sharing the knowledge and creating a big tent for normal people to discuss the subject. Been following the subject since my 20s. I'm now 48. It's not a hair-raising story, but this is my experience. Whilst on a trip to Banff National Park in '97, an experience happened to me that I could never put my finger on. It was only years later with the rise of YouTube and the sharing of more information on infrasound that it made sense. I am Scottish, but I have many family members that immigrated to Canada from Scotland in the 1960s. During the 1980s, I spent multiple summers as a kid in Canada, as I used to travel over from the UK for a month over the summer and spend time with my aunts, uncles, and cousins. This would include trips to Banff and Jasper from Edmonton, where they lived. I absolutely fell in love with the Canadian landscape and the Rockies. Yeah, it's pretty frickin' epic zone, isn't it? It's such a beautiful, beautiful thing, the Rocky Mountains. I spent up to 3 months at a time in the Rockies for years. Remote. In 1990, I joined the British Army and completed multiple tours of duty overseas. The last tour of duty, I was in Bosnia in '95, where we were shot at a few times, and we got so used to gunfire at night around Gorazde that you unconsciously blanked it out. The reason I mention this is even though I cannot pretend to be Rambo, as I was a combat engineer, we still saw a little action. I guess the point I'm trying to make is I was a very robust, fit, and fearless guy in my 20s. Still am now, really, a quarter of a century later, trained nearly as hard now in my 40s as I did in my 20s. After getting out of the Army in '96, I went over to visit my Canadian relatives in '97. This is only 18 months from being in Bosnia. After saying my hellos, I immediately left for the Rockies. I went alone to Banff National Park to complete a week or so. I went alone to Banff National Park to complete a week of solo hiking around with my camera. One day on a walk, I saw a ridge I fancied getting up to. No one knew where I was that day. This is before cell phones or mobile phones. Mobiles would call them in the UK. All I had was a light backpack, my lunch, and some water. I know I saw the signs everywhere in the entrance to the parks telling people to inform the ranger where you're planning on going, but hey, young, dumb, and you know the rest. I've been walking this area for a few days now and was starting to get my bearings. At no point had I felt or heard anything concerning. It was mild and sunny as I ventured through the patches of timber to my viewpoint. Around halfway up, as I walked past some annoying tree branches, I heard the clearest, cleanest tree break in my life. This completely took me off guard as it felt close and really loud. Just from the sound, I started mentally processing how thick the branch must have been. It would not have been something any normal person could just snap. It sounded way too thick. Whatever broke that branch meant to break that branch, and it did it powerfully. It was deliberate. I stopped dead in my tracks and just scanned the area. At this point, I suddenly realized how incredibly helpless I was and wished I had a rifle. I just knew instinctively something was wrong. Whatever made that noise made it to let me know it was there. And even though I could not see anything, I just felt something was in the area. I knew something was there, but I could not see. My mind was scrambling at this point, trying to work out what had just happened. I thought I heard in my head or felt something saying, go. The fear I felt at that moment was completely off the scale. It was more real than anything I'd felt in my life. Like nothing I'd felt before through years in the Army, or worse, bar fights in Glasgow. Bar fights, or even worse, bar fights in Glasgow. At that moment, everything went super quiet. Was this just my brain flooding with fight or flight chemicals, or did I just go super silent? Or did it just go super silent? The woods just stopped. Anyway, after around 30 seconds of staring around me and frantically scanning the tree lines, I decided to just get the hell out of there. I backtracked out of there. I got up the trail and then headed out. Once in the trail, I felt normal again. I never told anyone of this, as it just sounded like I was a few sandwiches short of a picnic. Looking back now, I think I was being told to stop. If you decide to keep going, this will not end well for you. I think this is infrasound from the Sabe people. I followed Dave Pilatus and the missing 411 subject and feel sure I could have been on one of his videos if I kept going. Thinking back, if it wanted me, it could have taken me easily. So I guess it was looking out for me in a way. That's my story. My name is Gary McLean, and I live just outside London now. I cannot wait to get back over there to the Rockies in 2022, when hopefully the world will be back to some sort of normalness. Anyways, thank you for hearing my story. Keep up the good work, Gary. Wow. Pretty alarming, isn't it, Gary? It's pretty alarming shit. But it is confusing, too. Why something wants to put such a frickin' massive dose of terror into us. I mean, wouldn't it just be easier to step out of the trail, look you square in the eyes and go, hey, I'm right here, and you probably shouldn't carry on down this way anymore, okay? So turn around. Without having to instill that absolute terror through your soul. I mean, you'd feel the terror enough anyway, just looking at the thing, right? I mean, well, I don't know, that should be something else if they took that tactic instead, wouldn't it? Just stand out in the wide open, look you square in the eye, and say, hey, turn around and get out of here. It's not too cool over here for you, all right? Who knows, maybe that'll start to happen one day. You never know. You never know. But thanks for that share. Keep sharing, and keep your head on a swivel when you run around those Rockies. There isn't any grizzly bear hunting going on in Alberta or BC anymore, so they are 100% on top of the top of the heap when it comes to the scheme of things, and they will not have any respect for you anymore. But anyway, different topic for a different time, different channel. This happened near the Skagit River in Washington State in the late 60s. I lived in a one-room houseboat on a float right under Bald Island in a slough we called Shit Creek. I could walk to La Conner about 4 miles away when the tide was down a bit. I'd cross the swampy ground and thick bush to get up onto a dike that kept the river out of the farmland. The dikes were about 10 feet high, and the ditches around them too deep to cross. It was very hard to cross the cultivated fields either side of the dike. The road and the dike led through the yard of the farm complex, which had big lights and aggressive dogs. You could not access the area without permission. About twilight one night, I decided to walk to town, get some groceries, and go to the Tav before walking back out to my cabin. When I got up on the dike, I saw a guy with a very long rifle coming toward me on the road. He was very, very small. The gun appeared to be an antique, was longer than he was tall. As he got closer, I saw that he was quite slender, maybe a bit under 4 feet, if that. Had a long gray beard, funny hat, old, but not elderly, and very old-fashioned clothes. I thought, wow, tiny guy. But I did not think anything else as we passed by each other. I said, evening, and he waved a hand but said nothing. After we passed, I wondered what the hell this teeny dude in antique clothes is doing headed for the river so late in the evening. In those days, any new person was noticed by the community and talked about, and much more so if they were not the usual sort. Who they were, where they came from, and what they were doing. So when I got to town, I asked around about the tiny guy in the very old-fashioned get-up. People seemed to think I'd been smoking something. He was not a known person in the community. I asked the farmer if he had rented a cabin to a person of this description, and he also seemed to think I was imagining something, but I knew what I saw. Okay, so this may have been just a very tiny guy in antique clothes, but it has also occurred to me that if this guy was not one of those little people, perhaps he's one of the medium-sized people, and that's a bit of a joke, but I've come to believe the explanation may not be within normally accepted stuff. The fact that I did not think so very much at the moment of observing this person, but simply observed him without judgment, except to wonder a bit as to the sense that the observation was real, even if the phenomenon may have been something else. Observing this character seemed real. I saw him up close, just like I would see anyone else. There was nothing strange going on. Everything was normal, except in retrospective, it's very hard to accept the appearance of this person. He was not one of those who have the very short legs. His body was totally proportional, just incredibly short and slender. The area was an old village site and was said to be haunted by the spirits of the ancestors. Hans Nelson, Vashon Island, Washington. Use the name if you want. Hans, that's crazy. What a crazy story. I don't think we've ever heard a flavor of story like that yet, to be honest. And I'd be curious as to what kind of gun he had. Was it like a muzzleloader? Was it a long shotgun? It doesn't sound like it was a sporting rifle, right? Stupid mosquitoes are getting at it. Man, that's a weird thing to see, man. I don't think we've had anybody email something like that in yet. But now that we shared it publicly, who knows? Maybe somebody will add to it. Maybe somebody's seen that dude. Who knows, right? What an odd encounter. But anyway, I think I'm going to take you guys somewhere else, show you another view. And I got some trails I want to go check. See what's going on up around the corner here. And I'm going to share some more before I go.